The retirement party invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks, corners curling slightly in the humid DC air. Cream-colored cardstock, thick and expensive, the lettering raised just enough to catch the light. My mother's meticulous handwriting framed the announcement like a formal decree, a tribute to a career of distinction, Commander Robert Fairchild, USN. She D-mailed it directly to my apartment, a pale yellow sticky note clinging to the corner. Please make an effort. The Harrisons will be there. The Harrisons, naturally. I'm Maura Fairchild, and for the past 19 years I've overseen billion-dollar defense budgets, testified under oath before congressional committees, and served as Deputy Controller for the United States Navy. My signature greenlights procurement contracts large enough to bankroll a small country. Last month, I stood in a secure briefing room outlining fiscal year projections for the Joint Chiefs. My family, meanwhile, is convinced I'm some sort of junior bookkeeper who struggles with basic math and poor life choices. It began quietly enough after I graduated from the Naval Academy at 23. I went into financial management instead of the combat tracks my father had envisioned. No cockpits, no command at sea, just spreadsheets, compliance, and appropriations law. My mother would smile politely and say, "This is Maura. She works with numbers for the Navy," vague by design. A cushion between her friends and the uncomfortable specifics of disappointment. My brother Harrison, yes, those Harrisons, earned his degree from Wharton and joined Goldman Sachs before he could legally rent a car. By 30, he owned a house in Greenwich. By 35, he sat on hospital boards and advisory committees for private equity firms. At my parents' dinner parties, these details were deployed with surgical precision. Harrison just wrapped up a major pharmaceutical acquisition. Efficient, impressive, civilian-approved. What was I supposed to contribute? That I'd redirected $847 million in shipbuilding funds to comply with a revised congressional markup. Their eyes would have dulled halfway through the sentence, so I stopped trying. I let them believe whatever version of me was easiest to digest, which somehow settled on mildly helpless. The moments stacked up over time, subtle but relentless. My mother offering to help me choose an apartment because real estate can be confusing. Harrison volunteering to review my investments before I made a mistake. My father's golf buddies asking if the Navy had special tracks for officers who weren't quite command material. The reality was far messier and far more demanding than they imagined. I lived alone in a modest Arlington one-bedroom, not out of necessity, but because I was barely there. My real workplace was the Pentagon. My days were filled with classified briefings, secure calls with fleet commanders, and oversight responsibilities that kept carrier strike groups functional. I'd made commander at 37, 2 years ahead of schedule, summer whites at work, khakis at the gym. I'd also perfected the art of not correcting assumptions. I told myself it was operational security. That was only partly true. The rest was exhaustion from explaining. From watching my mother hesitate when trying to brag about me, unsure how to phrase it. From the endless comparison where Harrison's Manhattan address and Aspen vacations defined success. So I stopped fighting it. I showed up to family dinners in jeans and a Yale sweatshirt, my father's alma mater, not mine, and nodded while Harrison explained compound interest like I was 12. When my mother worried out loud about my future if the Navy ever downsized, I smiled and said I'd manage. The Tuesday before Dad's party, Harrison called. "Hey, Maura. Just a heads up about Saturday," he said. "Mom asked me to mention that Senator Bradford will be there." "Okay," I replied, scanning a procurement audit with my phone pinned between shoulder and ear. "So maybe, I don't know, avoid work talk. The senator's sharp on defense stuff, and you know how you sometimes get mixed up on the details." "I'll do my best to rein in my ignorance," I said. He didn't catch it. "Great. Also, Mom bought you a dress. She'll bring it over Saturday morning. She figured you might not have anything suitable." I glanced at my service khakis hanging neatly behind my office door, ribbons aligned, gold shoulder boards polished. Controller badge pinned in place. "I'm sure it'll be lovely. I'm just trying to help," he said. "I know. That was the thing about being underestimated. People always believed they were being generous." Harrison thought he was sparing me humiliation. My mother thought she was compensating for my limitations. My father's quiet at the table wasn't cruelty, it was acceptance. He wanted a fighter pilot. He got a finance officer. After the call, I returned to the audit. A defense contractor had padded labor hour estimates on a destroyer retrofit $3.2 million in discrepancies. I documented it, drafted a memo, and forwarded it to the inspector general. By Friday, someone would be updating their resume. But yes, I probably needed help balancing my checkbook. Saturday showed up bright and aggressively cheerful, like a recruiting ad. My mother arrived at 8 with coffee and a garment bag. Navy blue, she announced, breezing inside. Get it, she laughed at herself. 3/4 sleeves, very professional. And no military outfits like you sometimes wear. They're called uniforms, Mom. Well, this is a civilian event. We want you to look normal. The dress was fine, simple, tailored, forgettable. I hung it beside my service dress blues and wondered what she'd say if she knew I'd worn those blues the week before to brief the Secretary of the Navy on readiness shortfalls. Are you dating anyone? She asked, peering into my fridge. Maura, this is just yogurt and creamer. I eat out because you can't cook or because groceries are expensive, because I'm almost never home, she nodded sympathetically. Matthew Harrison will be there tonight. He's a cardiologist, just finished his fellowship at Johns Hopkins. Very attractive. I showed him your Facebook picture. He thought you were cute. How flattering, given that photo is 5 years old. Don't be difficult. He's an excellent match. Much better than that enlisted boy you dated back then. That boy was now a chief petty officer supervising a nuclear reactor aboard a submarine. But yes, clearly inferior to a man who evaluated women via social media. I'll behave, I said, and maybe don't talk about the Navy too much. Men can get intimidated. I thought about the 3-star admiral who'd solicited my opinion on fleet recapitalization strategy the previous Tuesday. I'll keep it casual, I promised. She kissed my cheek and left, trailing perfume and concern. The party took place at my parents' Bethesda home, a colonial with a circular drive and enough space to comfortably host 4 dozen people. Dad had retired after 32 years as a Navy supply officer, ending his career at commander. The same rank I currently held, 9 years younger. No one seemed to notice. I arrived at 6 in the Navy dress and heels, hair down. My mother caught me at the door. Perfect, she said. Very civilian. The house was crowded with uniforms, retired captains, admirals, senior enlisted, all in dress blues, ribbons shining. My father stood beneath his framed retirement certificate, holding court about Gulf War supply chains. I took a glass of wine and stationed myself near the bookshelf, the universal signal for polite disengagement. Harrison appeared instantly. You made it. You look great. Very appropriate. Thanks. You too. His suit probably exceeded my monthly rent. Quick thing, he said quietly. Jack Morrison's here, CEO of Titan Defense Systems. Big deal? Okay, so if you talk to him, maybe keep it simple. He's used to flag officers and acquisition professionals. Don't act like you know more than you do. Titan Defense Systems. Holder of a $2.4 billion avionics contract. I'd forced them to resubmit after identifying $67 million in unallowable costs. I'll try, I said. That's all I'm asking. The evening unfolded predictably. My mother introduced me to Matthew Harrison, the cardiologist, who spent 15 uninterrupted minutes discussing his research without asking me a single question. I smiled, I nodded. Harrison held court with a group of executives, discussing market volatility. My father showed off his retirement gifts, a brass compass, a shadow box with his medals. A flag that had flown over the Capitol. No one asked me about my work. Around 7:30, I was refilling my wine when I heard Harrison's voice from the dining room pitched loud enough to carry. Honestly, can't believe she's still in. The Navy must have different standards for administrative positions. Laughter, male voices I didn't recognize. I stood very still, wine bottle in hand. She's been in for what, almost 20 years and still just doing paperwork. Meanwhile, our dad made commander and ran logistics operations, apples and oranges. More laughter than my father's voice, quieter. She does her best. The kindness in his tone was somehow worse than mockery. I put down the wine bottle and walked outside to the patio. The October air was cool, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. I could see the party through the French doors, the uniforms, the suits, the careful social choreography of success and status. My phone buzzed. A text from my boss, Rear Admiral Chen, Senate Armed Services Committee, moved up Monday's hearing to 90. You're testifying on shipbuilding accounts. Confirm receipt. I typed back, confirmed, I'll be there. Through the glass, I watched Harrison laugh with a group of men in suits. My father nodded along with a story someone was telling. My mother fluttered between groups, playing hostess. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something closer to anthropological curiosity. How had we gotten here? When had the gap between their perception and my reality grown so wide that it became unbridgeable, I went back inside. By 8:30, dinner was over and people had migrated to the living room. Someone had turned on the television, a wall-mounted screen showing CNN with the sound muted, closed captioning scrolling across the bottom. I was standing near the fireplace, half listening to Matthew Harrison explain cardiac bypass procedures when my father's CEO, Jack Morrison, approached our group. "Robert," he said, shaking my father's hand, "hell of a career, you should be proud." "Thank you, Jack, I am." Morrison's eyes moved me. "And this is my daughter, Maura," my father said. "She's also in the Navy, is that right?" Morrison smiled. "What do you do?" Here it was, the moment I could correct everything. "Financial management," I said simply. Ah, his interest visibly waned. "Well, that's important work. Someone has to do the paperwork." Harrison materialized at my elbow. "Moore is being modest. She's very good at what she does. We actually help her with her taxes." "Finance can be complicated," Morrison chuckled. "I'm sure the tax code's a nightmare." "She can barely balance her own checkbook," Harrison said, and there was genuine affection in his voice, like he was sharing an endearing quirk. "We handle all her financial planning, make sure she doesn't do anything crazy." The executive smiled awkwardly. My father stood 3 feet away, drink in hand. He didn't correct him. The moment stretched. I watched my father's face, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way he looked down at his drink. Not shame exactly, just resignation. This was the daughter he had. This was the truth he'd accepted. Morrison patted my shoulder. "Well, lucky you have family looking out for you. Financial management's tricky stuff." "Sure is," I said quietly. Harrison started telling Morrison about a hedge fund strategy. My father drifted toward another conversation and I stood there, wine glass in hand, invisible. Then someone said, "Hey, isn't that one of the retired admirals?" Was pointing at the television. The CNN segment had changed. The closed captioning read, "Breaking Senate Budget Committee hearings resumed Monday. Defense spending under scrutiny." The camera showed the Senate chamber. And there, walking toward the witness table in service dress blues, was me. The room went quiet. The closed captioning continued. "Commander Maura Fairchild, Deputy Comptroller of the Navy, will testify on shipbuilding appropriations and fiscal oversight." The camera zoomed in. My face filled the screen. Hair in a regulation bun, ribbons precise, the gold controller badge visible on my chest. Someone picked up the remote and turned on the sound. "Commander Fairchild has been instrumental in identifying over $4 billion in cost overruns across multiple defense programs." The anchor was saying her testimony Monday is expected to be critical in shaping next year's defense budget. The room was absolutely silent. Harrison's mouth was open. Morrison was staring at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. My mother's hand had gone to her throat. My father had frozen mid-sip. The admiral who pointed at the TV started laughing, a deep, delighted laugh. "Holy hell, Bob, did you know your daughter was testifying before the Senate Budget Committee?" My father's voice came out strangled. What, that's Maura, isn't it?" Another retired officer said, squinting at the screen. "Jesus Christ, Bob, she's a deputy controller. How did we not know this?" Morrison turned to me slowly. His face had gone through several colors. "You're that Commander Fairchild." I took a sip of wine. "I'm a Commander Fairchild, yes. The one who killed the Titan supplemental funding request last year. That was me. Your cost accounting was a mess." His face went red. "That was $67 million in legitimate, in unallowable indirect expenses." I finished. I read the contract. "You tried to bill us for executive compensation packages that violated federal acquisition regulations." Dead silence. Harrison's voice came out as a whisper. "Maura," I looked at him. "Really?" "Looked at him? Yeah, you testified before Congress. Multiple times. I'm doing it again Monday. But you said you do financial management." "I do. I manage about $176 billion in annual Navy appropriations." My mother made a small sound. "Billion, billion." My father was staring at me like I'd spontaneously grown wings. "You're a deputy comptroller, have been for 3 years. Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung in the air. I could have said, "Because you never asked." Because every time I tried to explain my work, your eyes glazed over. Because it was easier to let you think I was incompetent than to watch you fail to understand the thing I'd built. Instead, I said, "You seemed happy with your version of me." Harrison's face had gone from red to pale. All this time when I was telling you about municipal bonds and tax strategies, I was being polite. Jesus Christ. He ran a hand through his hair. I explained compound interest to you. You did. You managed $176 billion. I do. Morrison had recovered slightly. You're the one who flagged the destroyer retrofit audit. That was also me. That investigation cost 3 executives their jobs. It cost the taxpayers $3.2 million less than it would have otherwise. I turned to him fully. Your company bills the government $847 an hour for senior program managers. I know this because I approve those rates. And I know that last quarter you tried to charge us for 12 hours of work from a manager who was actually on vacation in Bermuda. So maybe let's not talk about legitimate expenses. His mouth worked silently. The retired admiral was still laughing. Bob, your daughter just destroyed a defense CEO in your living room. This is the best retirement party I've ever been to. My father sat down his drink very carefully. Mara, why didn't you tell me? And there it was, the question beneath the question. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Of course it would have, would it? You wanted a warrior dad, fighters and surface warfare officers, people with exciting stories for dinner parties. I did financial management and that was boring, so you just stopped asking. All of you did. My mother's voice was very small. We thought you were struggling. I'm not struggling, I'm succeeding. You just couldn't see it because it didn't look like Harrison's success. Harrison was staring at his shoes. I have security clearances you can't imagine. I continued. I brief admirals and senators. I've been to the White House twice this year, and I let you think I couldn't balance my checkbook because it was easier than explaining why my work matters to people who'd already decided it didn't. My father's face had crumpled. Maura, I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I'm just tired. I'm tired of being the family disappointment when I'm actually really, really good at what I do. The television was still playing behind us. The CNN anchor had moved on to another story, but my image was frozen in a small box in the corner. Commander Maura Fairchild, service dress blues, testifying before Congress. Morrison cleared his throat. I'm going to go. Probably wise, I said. He left quickly. The retired admiral raised his glass to me. Commander, on behalf of all of us who have dealt with defense contractor, thank you for your service. A few people laughed nervously. The tension broke slightly. My father was still staring at me. I'm so sorry. I know I didn't mean to. I know that too. Harrison finally looked up. I feel like an idiot. You should, I said, but gently. You've been explaining finance to a financial expert for 2 decades. Why did you let me? I thought about that because you needed to feel helpful. Because it made Mom feel better to think someone was taking care of me because it was easier than fighting. That's not, he stopped. That's awful. We were awful. You were ignorant, I corrected. There's a difference. My mother had tears in her eyes. I'm so proud of you. Now you are, I said, not cry, just factually. She flinched but nodded. I set down my wine glass. I need to go. I have a Senate hearing Monday and I need to prep. Maura, wait. My father reached for my arm. I paused. I'm sorry I didn't correct him, he said quietly. When Harrison said you couldn't balance your checkbook, I'm sorry, I just stood there. I looked at him. This man who'd spent 32 years in the Navy, who I'd spent my whole life trying to impress, and I felt the weight of it lift. I know you are, I said, and I forgive you, but I need you to know something. I didn't become this person to impress you. I became this person because it's who I am, whether you saw it or not. He nodded slowly. I see it now. Good. I kissed his cheek, hugged my mother, nodded to Harrison, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear the party resuming quieter now. The conversations muted and uncertain. Someone changed the channel. Someone else proposed a toast to my father. I got in my car and sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. Admiral Chen saw the CNN segment. You're trending on Twitter. Navy Comptroller. Congrats on the accidental publicity, I typed back. Not entirely accidental. What do you mean? I may have mentioned to a CNN producer that I'd be at my father's retirement party this weekend and that my family didn't know what I did for a living. You orchestrated this. I orchestrated the TV being on CNN at the right time. The rest happened organically. A pause, then remind me never to underestimate you. Too late, everyone already did. I started the car and drove home through the October darkness. Monday's hearing would be contentious. Shipbuilding funds always were. I'd spend Sunday reviewing testimony, memorizing figures, preparing for senators who'd try to catch me in inconsistencies. But tonight, for the first time in 19 years, my family knew who I really was. Not the daughter who needed help, not the officer who couldn't cut it. Just me, Commander Maura Fairchild, Deputy Comptroller of the United States Navy, testifying before Congress on Monday morning. Someone who balanced a lot more than checkbooks, someone who